What is going on, everybody? It is Nelly B here, and let's just cut right to the chase. This isn't a video I would usually make, and it's not one that I hope to make in the future. So, you've seen the title and the thumbnail, and you've either already sat down in preparation of this video ready to discuss the topic, or you've already disliked and left the tard comment. Either way, I'm fine with that. My most viewed video is my most disliked video, so do with that what you will. What we are here to talk about today is a YouTuber in the zombies community. Now let me preface this video by saying I do not hate this person at all. I've watched this person for many years, and their content, whether I like it or not, has affected the way I make my own. I do not wish to send hate to this person at all. If anything, I want to have a discussion. Many of the views this person has stated are ones that I would have agreed with just about a year ago. I have since changed my views for the better in my opinion. However, this isn't a video trying to silence anyone for having the quote-unquote wrong opinion. I am for free speech. But in the most free society, we are able to talk about and ridicule those for having opinions based on falsehoods. Essentially, I am for correct consequences being applied to actions and the outcome of them, which is why I specifically need to state that I'm not for deplatforming this person. And one last thing to mention, this tweet. I can see a lot of people right now telling me this person doesn't actually care about what he tweets. He's just a shit poster. And I will agree with that wholeheartedly. However, I highly doubt this person in question will see this and not want to argue what he said was fact. And if he didn't care about the tweet he made, he wouldn't care to defend the validity of the statement. You'll notice that I'm making a lot of pre-clarifying claims, simply because I do not have the time to repeat myself after every point I make, and because I know for a fact that if he does end up reacting or sharing this in any way, shape, or form, I will have some brainlets jumping into my Twitter and into my comments, spouting off nonsense like I'm some sort of communist who can't take a joke and hates free speech. And if you know me at all, you know that's just not the person I am. I'm a very small channel compared to this person, and I've seen how these interactions go online, so I apologize for not wanting to be taken out of context. So let's get into this, shall we? The creator in question, Crazy Rabbit. I know, right? Shocker. Anyways, Rabbit tweeted out, "There's only two genders. Suck my balls." Now, a lot of people, including Rabbit and his followers, think that this is somehow offending the non-binary and even trans people somehow. Anyways, regarding this statement alone, it isn't offending anyone. We'll see a few people comment with actual grievances, but the responses from those people don't seem to come from a place of offense or even malice. Actually, the only two people who want to have a conversation and actually provide evidence for what they say are those who disagree with this statement. Anyways, that's just a long way of saying nobody's fucking offended. I'm sure some 14-year-old Instagrammer who doesn't eat at Chick-fil-A wants to become a journalist at CNN whose mom believes in healing gems and shit would be pretty steamed about this statement. Oh boy, Rabbit, you really got them girls shaking in their Uggs, huh? The main point of this tangent is meant to preface the next thing we go over, the replies. These people will say one of three things. It's either the cringe joke that I will admit I made before in fucking 2017, and even then it was old. But the jokes go something like, oh, well, I don't even need to make up an example. Here's one. The joke. It's just a dumb joke. It stopped being funny in 2016, and it assumes that the new and old genders being proposed are so outlandish that they can be compared to something like a toaster or an Apache helicopter. In other words, a straw man. This view strictly comes from the unwillingness to look at information that conflicts with your ideas, because if any of the people even read one sentence of any of the articles presented in this thread, they would not be saying any of this shit. And even if that were the case, does someone identifying as a toaster really affect you that much? Sure, you may be called rude because you didn't identify them as such. However, if you're so adamant on calling out the inconsistencies of their logic, then why is it, when presented with actual arguments or actual questions, do these people retreat to ad hominems? If you actually cared about getting to the roots of this so-called problem, you'd be able to dismantle it with actual arguments. At least you'd think. Now, there are few people who have genuinely asked about the subject, some nicer than others, but even then, it's literally only one person, and they're still being an asshole about it. I should mention that yes, simply even making this video may make me look like an ass. I just hope it's that one. But that's because what I'm saying is rooted in scientific studies. Studies his community seem to neglect for some reason. I mean, all they have to do is click them and read. I'm an asshole because this information is presented time and time again, even to people like me when I held these views, and I just couldn't handle the contrary beliefs. It was just too much. The second thing people usually say is, Waiting for all the furry accounts who's getting prepared to charge you right at this moment, Lamau. As if there's a bunch of people in or close enough to this community to be angry or even care about this. Again, by saying that, these people will think that my point of contention is now somehow baseless because I'm upset about the situation as a whole and I actually care about people. You may even think this now, but I promise you, this is not my main point. This is simply meant to show you full context. There are two people I could find who were oh so bold enough to come out and support non-binary people with facts. I appreciate the fuck out of y'all, stay gold. So let's take a quick look at what we just went over. Crazy Rabbit, the zombies YouTuber with 313,000 subscribers. The shitposter of Twitter who doesn't care about what he tweets. He just wants reactions. If this is true, he would 1. Not contend with any of the gender theory that I have presented thus far, and 2. Whether it was intended or not, the reactions came from not people who were upset with this tweet, but his own followers. I will give him the benefit of the doubt. This tweet may have been made to make certain people upset. Certain people whose points I may agree with, but tactics I disagree. But it allowed a whole other group, about 95% of the replies, to actually defend anti-science and ridicule a young Twitter user who I will be blurring the name of because the person looks like a child. This is the part of the video where my main intentions for making this video come through. With everything we've gone over already, this next part of the video is the most important. The tweet I will mainly be referring to is this one. Again, not going to say the name for obvious reasons, but here we go. Blank Twitter user says, well, it's not a matter of opinion. You're wrong. This tweet in no way shows any form of triggering and or contempt for the OG tweet. It simply states a difference of opinion. This tweet was sent out about 15 minutes after the original tweet. We have to keep that in mind for later. The first response we'll look at is this one from Random God. He says, what other genders are there? Why do you think at gender reveal parties there are 2 colors? If you have a kid, the doctor will not say that the baby is something other than a boy or a girl. People like you need to use their brains. Regardless of the fact of anybody's inability to name every single gender or specifically put a number on how many there are, or why a gender reveal party might somehow prove that there are only 2 genders. That's like going into outer space and saying gravity doesn't exist. Now, this is something I failed to mention up until this point, but I think now is a good time as any. I'm not an expert on any gender theory, mainly because until you have a degree in this shit, you aren't really an expert. And I know people make fun of those type of degrees, but what those people don't realize is that they don't actually know what they're talking about. They just look stupid. Now, I understand how someone could say the same for me. You just said you're not an expert. Well, I'm not an expert, and I never claimed to be. All I stand by at this point are the basic digestible studies anybody can read on, which, what do you know, are the only links in the description at this time, along with the thread itself. Anyways, a very, very basic summary goes like this. Gender is separate from sex, which is determined by X and Y chromosomes. Gender is heavily dependent on society and culture. For example, many researchers in the past have tried to classify the genders as male and female, making distinctions along the lines of aggression, violence, or one's ability to care is specific to one gender, pertaining to how much that gender portrays that characteristic. However, this is immediately debunked when you realize that women and men feel anger. Women and men have the ability to care for people. It's only the people who say men can't cry who don't acknowledge this. This greatly resembles the excuse white slave owners used to own slaves or even today to justify racism. For example, many people will cite statistics such as black people participate in 50% of violent crime despite being only 13% of the population. This is then used to justify the notion that black people are more prone to violent crime because they're black. This completely ignores the constant studies that prove this disparity is more in part due to the inequality and subhuman treatment they have been subjected to by the greater part of the country for most of their existence in said country. I mention this not because I'm trying to say any of these people are equal to slave owners or neo-Nazis today, but to simply make the connection between two bigoted lines of thinking. The reason I bring this up is because not only are Rabbit and most of his followers firm believers that America can do no wrong and any information, no matter how factual it may be, doesn't matter because we're still the best. We could dedicate a whole other video to flaws in that logic, but I'll let that simmer with his audience. I also mention this because not only do most of these people not understand that sex is separate from gender, but they also use that misunderstanding to be hatred-driven goblins who flock around any crumb of justification they can, like big YouTubers who use their platform to shitpost about subjects they're misinformed on. Funny how that works. Getting back to the thread, you have your usual meaningless cry about it response. More misunderstandings of the topic at hand and just genuine bigotry. Let's just go back to that one person's response. Although I would argue that what Rabbit's OG tweet said was meaningless at face value, nothing that this girl said in response to this tweet prompted this much hate other than, they're on Twitter, what do you expect? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I want more facts and less bigotry on the sites that I use. That's right, my bad. Anyways, this next tweet in the aftermath of it pushed me to make this video. The response is from a user named whatever. Vair posted a picture that says, "Has your child got autism?" Which then prompts this response. Yes, I do in fact. I have Asperger's syndrome. That does not take away from the fact that gender identity is a scientifically accepted fact. If you didn't know, Asperger's is essentially a developmental disorder affecting ability to effectively socialize and communicate. Let me read that again. A developmental disorder affecting ability to effectively socialize and communicate. And these people just took it upon themselves to not only go directly against science, be heinous people in their replies, but also go as far as to mock someone for their disability, which they didn't even need to come forward about. If this person is watching, I sincerely hope that you are okay, and I'm making this video for people like you. Moving on, after this comment was made, shortly after, Rabbit posts this. Remember, we've already established that this is the only discussion being had around the time of this comment. The only logical way that you can be amused by this discussion is if you truly believe there are only two genders and or have some animosity towards those who hold opposing beliefs, or thinking making fun of autistic people and telling them they're not wanted because they're autistic is somehow funny. I don't, however. Now, for the second and last time, let's look over all the information presented. Crazy Rabbit is a shitposter with no regard to how what he says affects those who watch him. But at the same time, if he truly didn't care, he would at the most stop or subdue these hateful and bigoted comments that spawn from this tweet. Furthermore, I firmly agree that content creators cannot control everything their followers say in response. However, pointing out how amusing it is to see an autistic young user be ridiculed for actually bringing substance to their claims and simply being autistic. I know how this can be seen as a strong claim, but I urge you to go check the thread for timestamps to see when this all happened. And if for some reason Rabbit begins to care and deletes this tweet or single comments, I will be uploading a Google Doc linked with all of the screenshots pertaining to this video. In conclusion, this video is meant more as a question. I would like Rabbit, if he sees this, or any of his viewers who support this, actually back up their claims. I know you'll say you don't care about these issues, but you argue like you do. You've spewed enough hatred to show me that you actually deeply care about these issues. And if you don't, admit that you're wrong. If you truly do not care about these statements, simply say, I accept science and do not bully autistic people. I understand some of the points I brought up in this video may be a lot to digest for someone who is only here for zombies. And I apologize for that. If it weren't for Rabbit's baseless American #1 claims in the past, his bad faith arguments that I've personally been subjected to, and this atrocious thread, I wouldn't be making this video today. But I deeply care about this community that I've called home for so many reasons. We need to understand that what we say has an effect on people who both agree and disagree. This far-right, bigoted, and hateful environment is not what I'm here for. I understand that this thread does not represent the community in any way. At least I hope. Again, I'm talking about accountability. Not even for the OG tweet itself, but the way it greenlit baseless and bigoted comments that followed, and his apparent coincidental response to the OG tweet that, again, at the time it was posted, can only be referring to the one discussion going on. And as I mentioned before, the flimsy response of, he doesn't actually care about these issues, doesn't dismiss the actual rejection of facts and hatred happening in these comments. You know, the same hate he is apparently amused by. His community, and from my personal experience, Rabbit himself, are spineless cowards who perpetuate hate based on false logic and the inability to actually hold a meaningful conversation. I usually don't try to attack characters, mainly just their points, but when their points have no backing other than hate comments, I can't help but call it out. Now, I've tried to talk to as many people about the situation as possible on both sides of the aisle. What I found was that people who agree with me tend to gravitate towards the notion that because he has such a large fan base and because he's collabing with every other big YouTuber that this is even a bigger problem. There is a problem in a country with the same rhetoric that he spews in other communities funneling into it, and although that's valid, I don't think it's really important to the discussion that we're having right now. I'm not going to reach out to other YouTubers to explain these comments, these disgusting comments that are being left in his replies and him just having fun with it. I haven't seen any of them reply to any of this. I haven't seen any of them justify any of this. I've simply seen people acknowledge him, and that isn't enough to make me say that those people are also contributing to the problem, which is why I didn't necessarily bring them up. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this, and I understand why, again, but it's not the problem or discussion that I wanted to talk about. I mean, we can, if you want, in the comments below. It is a whole other thing in itself, but I just don't think it's worth mentioning at length in this video because it really doesn't need to be said to support any of the claims that I've made. If anyone has any contentions with this video, let me know down in the comments below, and hey, even the Twitter DMs are open. However, unlike Rabbit, I'm not amused by an innate hatred for others, so that shit will not be seen by anyone other than the people who post it. Anyways, guys, make sure... Who the fuck am I kidding? Just go ahead and dislike it. It's gonna happen anyways. Yeah, stay safe, wear a mask, and peace.